Marcus Chen stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling windows of his home office, watching the sunrise paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. His reflection stared back at him, a 42-year-old man who had everything the world said mattered. The massive house behind him, the luxury cars in the garage, the investment portfolio that most people could only dream about. But none of it felt like enough anymore. 2 years ago, his world had shattered when Sarah, his wife, lost her battle with cancer. She'd been his college sweetheart, his business partner in those early struggling days, and most importantly, the mother of their beautiful daughter, Lily. When Sarah died, Marcus threw himself into work. It was easier to lose himself in business deals and corporate strategy than to face the empty space beside him in bed each night. Lily had only been 4 years old when she lost her mother. Marcus watched helplessly as his bright, bubbly little girl became quiet and withdrawn. He tried his best, but he didn't know how to braid her hair the way Sarah did, or remember which stuffed animal she needed at bedtime, or understand why she cried when he packed the wrong snack for preschool. The nannies helped, but they weren't family. They weren't her mother. Then, 6 months ago, he'd met Victoria at a charity gala. She was elegant, poised, and when he'd mentioned having a young daughter, her eyes had lit up with what seemed like genuine warmth. "I've always loved children," she'd said, placing her perfectly manicured hand on his arm. "I think they're our greatest gift." Their courtship had been swift. Victoria seemed perfect. She remembered little details about Lily, brought her thoughtful presents, and even knew how to do those complicated braids that Marcus could never figure out. When he'd proposed after just 4 months, it felt right. Lily needed a mother figure, and Victoria seemed eager to fill that role. The wedding had been small and elegant. Lily had been the flower girl, wearing a dress that Victoria had helped her pick out. In the photos, they looked like the perfect family. Marcus remembered feeling hopeful for the first time since Sarah's death. Maybe they could be happy again. Maybe Lily could have the stable, loving home she deserved. Now, as he stood in his office, preparing for another long day, Marcus heard footsteps behind him. Victoria appeared in the doorway, looking impeccable in a silk robe, her blonde hair perfectly styled even at 6 in the morning. "You're up early," she said, her voice smooth as honey. "Big day ahead?" "The biggest," Marcus replied, turning to face her. "The Singapore investors are finally ready to sign. If this deal goes through, it'll be the largest acquisition in the company's history." Victoria crossed the room and adjusted his tie, her movements practiced and precise. "You work so hard, darling. Sometimes I worry you push yourself too much." "It's all for Lily," Marcus said automatically. It was what he always said, his justification for the long hours and frequent travel. "I want to make sure she has everything she needs, that her future is secure." "Of course," Victoria said, but something flickered in her eyes, something Marcus was too distracted to notice. "She's very lucky to have such a devoted father." As if on cue, they heard small footsteps padding down the hallway. Lily appeared in the doorway, clutching her worn teddy bear, the one Sarah had given her for her 3rd birthday. At 6 years old, she was small for her age, with her dark hair and her father's brown eyes. "Daddy?" she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. Marcus transformed with a genuine smile. He knelt down and opened his arms. "Good morning, sweetheart. Come give Daddy a hug." Lily rushed forward, and Marcus caught her, lifting her into his arms. She buried her face in his neck, breathing in his familiar scent. "Are you leaving again?" she asked, her voice muffled. Marcus felt the familiar pang of guilt. "Just for a few days, princess. 3 days this time. But when I get back, we'll do something special. Just you and me. What do you want to do? Zoo? Amusement park? You name it." Lily pulled back slightly, and Marcus noticed how thin she'd gotten. Had she always been this small? He made a mental note to ask Victoria about it later. "Can we just stay home and watch movies, like we used to do with Mommy?" The question hit Marcus like a punch to the chest. He glanced at Victoria, whose expression remained perfectly pleasant, but he thought he saw her jaw tighten slightly. "Of course we can," Marcus said, kissing Lily on top of her forehead. "We'll have a whole movie marathon. I'll even let you pick all the movies."
Even the princess ones? Lily asked, a tiny smile appearing on her face. Even the princess ones, Marcus confirmed, setting her down gently. Now go have breakfast with Victoria while Daddy finishes getting ready, okay? Victoria immediately stepped forward, her smile bright and warm. Come on, sweetheart. Let's go make pancakes together. Would you like that? Lily nodded, but Marcus noticed she didn't reach for Victoria's hand. Instead, she hugged her teddy bear tighter and walked toward the kitchen on her own. Victoria followed, chatting cheerfully about what kind of pancakes they should make. Marcus returned to his office, reviewing the presentation one more time. His phone buzzed with a text from his assistant confirming that the private jet was ready. He grabbed his briefcase and laptop bag, taking one last look around his home office. Everything was perfectly arranged. Awards and photos on the shelves, expensive art on the walls, leather furniture that cost more than most people's cars. On his desk sat a framed photo from happier times. Him, Sarah, and baby Lily at the beach, all three of them laughing at something off camera. Sarah's smile was radiant, her eyes full of life. Marcus touched the frame gently. "I'm doing my best," he whispered to the photo. "I'm trying to give her everything." But even as he said it, a small voice in the back of his mind wondered if he was really giving Lily what she needed most. His time, his presence, his attention. He pushed the thought aside. This deal would set them up for life. After this, he could slow down, spend more time at home, be the father Lily deserved. Just 3 more days. Marcus walked to the kitchen, where Victoria was indeed making pancakes, while Lily sat at the counter, swinging her legs and watching. Victoria was telling some animated story that made her laugh. The sound was music to Marcus's ears. "See, everything is fine. Victoria is wonderful with Lily." "All right, my girls," he said, kissing Lily on the top of her head and giving Victoria a quick kiss on the cheek. "I'll be back Thursday evening. Be good for Victoria, okay, princess?" "Okay, Daddy," Lily said quietly. "Don't worry about a thing," Victoria said, her smile perfect. "We'll have a wonderful time together, won't we, Lily?" Lily nodded, but she didn't smile. Marcus noticed, but told himself he was reading too much into it. Lily was always a bit clingy when he left for trips. She'd be fine once he was gone. He grabbed his bags and headed for the door where his driver was waiting. As the car pulled out of the driveway, Marcus looked back at the house. His beautiful, expensive house with its perfect landscaping and impressive architecture. Through the kitchen window, he could see Victoria and Lily, looking like a picture from a magazine. Everything looked perfect from the outside. If only he'd looked closer, he might have seen the way Lily's small shoulders tensed when Victoria placed a hand on them. He might have noticed the way his daughter's smile faded the moment his car turned the corner. But Marcus Chen, for all his business brilliance, was about to learn the hardest lesson of his life, that the most important things happening in your home are often the things you don't see. The car merged onto the highway, taking him toward the airport, toward his important deal, toward 3 days that would change everything. Behind him, in that perfect house, the real story was just beginning. The sound of Marcus's car fading down the driveway was like a timer going off. Victoria stood at the kitchen counter, her hand still resting on Lily's shoulder, her smile still plastered on her face. She counted silently in her head. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The moment the car disappeared from view, Victoria's hand lifted from Lily's shoulder as if the child had burned her. The warm smile vanished, replaced by a cold, hard expression that would have shocked Marcus if he'd seen it. She walked to the window and watched until she was absolutely certain the car was gone, then pulled out her phone and checked the tracking app she had secretly installed on Marcus's device. The little dot was moving toward the airport. Perfect. "All right," Victoria said, her voice completely different now, sharp and businesslike. "Stop sitting there like a princess and clean up this mess." "But you said we were going to make pancakes together." Lily looked up, confused. "Together? Sweetheart, I don't cook for children. That's what the help is for. Speaking of which," she grabbed the bowl of pancake batter and dumped it directly into the sink. "You won't be needing this. You've gotten chubby lately. Did you know that? Your father might not notice, but I do." Lily's eyes filled with tears. She wasn't chubby.
In fact, she had lost weight over the past few months, but no one seemed to notice. She looked down at her small hands, not understanding what she'd done wrong. "I'm going to my yoga class," Victoria announced, already heading toward the stairs. "And when I get back, I expect this kitchen to be spotless. Every dish washed, every counter cleaned, floor swept and mopped. Do you understand?" "But I don't know how to figure it out," Victoria snapped. "You're 6 years old, not a baby. And if it's not done when I get back, no lunch for you. Maybe that'll help with that pudgy stomach." Lily watched Victoria disappear upstairs, her chest tight with fear and confusion. This wasn't the Victoria who smiled and laughed when Daddy was home. This was someone else entirely, someone scary. But who would believe her if she told? Victoria was always so nice when other people were around. 30 minutes later, Victoria...
The next morning arrived with golden sunshine streaming through Lily's bedroom window, but it brought no comfort. She'd barely slept, her stomach cramping with hunger. Victoria had never called her down for dinner the night before, and breakfast seemed like a distant dream. A sharp knock on her door made her jump. She didn't even have time to answer before Victoria swept in, already dressed in white linen pants and a silk blouse, looking like she'd stepped out of a magazine. "Get up," Victoria commanded. "We have a lot of work to do today." Lily scrambled out of bed, still wearing yesterday's dress because she'd been too afraid to change. "Can I have breakfast first?" Victoria pursed her lips, pretending to consider it. "Maybe after you finish your chores? The garden is a disaster, and we're having some of Daddy's business associates over next week. I need it looking perfect. You're going to help me." "Okay," Lily said quietly. At least working in the garden meant being outside. Maybe it wouldn't be so bad. She was wrong. Victoria led her to the backyard where their elaborate garden sprawled across half an acre. There were rose bushes, ornamental grasses, flower beds bursting with color, and decorative stones lining winding pathways. It had been Sarah's pride and joy. She'd spent hours out here with baby Lily, teaching her the names of flowers and letting her play in the dirt. Now it felt like enemy territory. "See all these weeds?" Victoria gestured broadly at the garden beds. "Every single one needs to be pulled, by hand, and I want the roots out too, not just the tops." Lily looked at the vast expanse of garden. There were weeds everywhere, growing between the flowers, pushing up through the mulch, tangling around the rose bushes. It would take days to pull them all. "But that's so many," Lily said before she could stop herself. Victoria's eyes flashed dangerously. "Are you arguing with me?" "No, ma'am," she whispered, recognizing the warning signs. "Good, because little girls who argue don't eat lunch either. Now get started." "Can I have gloves?" Lily asked, remembering how her mother always wore special garden gloves. Victoria laughed, the sound cold and brittle. "Gloves? Your father spoils you rotten, do you know that? When I was your age, I worked twice as hard as this without complaint. You need to learn what real work feels like. No gloves. Use your hands like everyone else." Lily knelt in the dirt near the first flower bed, her small fingers closing around a stubborn weed. She pulled, but it didn't budge. She tried again, harder this time, and the weed finally came free, along with a shower of dirt that got on her eyes and mouth. "That's one," Victoria said, from her comfortable position on the patio lounge chair sipping iced tea. "Only about 1,000 more to go." The hours crawled by like wounded animals. The morning sun grew hotter, beating down on Lily's unprotected head. She didn't have a hat, and she didn't dare ask for one. Her fingers quickly became raw and dirty, her nails packed with soil. Some weeds came out easily, but others fought back, their roots deep and stubborn. Mrs. Rodriguez appeared around 11 o'clock with a tray of lemonade. She set it on the patio table, her eyes finding Lily's small figure bent over the flower bed. "Would Lily like some lemonade?" she asked Victoria carefully. "She's fine," Victoria said without looking up from her phone. "She needs to learn to finish her work before expecting rewards." Mrs. Rodriguez caught Lily's eye and saw the exhaustion there, the way the child swayed slightly even while kneeling. "At least let her have some water. It's getting very hot." Victoria sighed dramatically. "Fine. Lily, you may have 1 glass of water, then back to work." Lily practically ran to the patio, her throat parched and aching. She gulped down the water so fast she nearly choked. Mrs. Rodriguez steadied her with a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Slow down, mija. Not so fast." "That's enough," Victoria announced. After barely 30 seconds, "Back to the garden." Lily returned to her work, but now her head felt fuzzy and strange. The sun seemed brighter, almost blinding. She reached for another weed, this one growing thick and wild near the base of a large rose bush. The rose bushes had always been Sarah's favorites. Deep red blooms the size of teacups, their fragrance sweet and strong. But they came with a price, thorns as sharp as needles covering every stem. Lily pushed aside some of the lower leaves, trying to reach the tangle of weeds at the base. Her small hand disappeared into the shadowy space beneath the bush, fingers searching for the weed's stem. She felt it and grabbed hold, pulling hard. The pain was instant and shocking. She yanked her hand back with a cry, but something had bitten her, really bitten her. It wasn't a thorn scratch. This was different. She looked at her hand and saw 2 tiny puncture marks on the fleshy part of her palm just below her thumb. Already the skin around the bite was turning red and starting to swell. "Victoria," she called out, her voice high with fear. "Something bit me." Victoria looked up from her phone with irritation. "What, Mao?" "Something bit me," Lily repeated, stumbling toward the patio with her hand outstretched. "It really hurts." Victoria barely glanced at it. "It's probably just a bee sting. Don't be so dramatic." "It wasn't a bee," Lily insisted, tears streaming down her dirty cheeks. "It was something else. Please, it really hurts." Victoria finally stood up and walked over, grabbing Lily's wrist roughly to examine the hand. She saw the 2 puncture marks and the spreading redness, but dismissed it with a wave. "It's just a spider bite or something. You'll be fine. Stop crying and get back to work." "But it hurts so much," Lily sobbed. "Can we put medicine on it?" Victoria snapped. "Medicine is for real injuries, not little bug bites. You're fine. Now stop whining and finish pulling those weeds. You're not even halfway done." Mrs. Rodriguez appeared in the doorway, drawn by Lily's cries. She saw the child's swollen hand and her face paled. "That looks serious. She needs to see a doctor." "She needs to stop being such a baby," Victoria countered. "It's a tiny bug bite. She'll be fine by dinner." But Lily wasn't fine. As the afternoon wore on, the pain in her hand intensified. The swelling spread from her palm up toward her wrist, and the skin around the bite turned an angry shade of purple-red. She felt dizzy and sick, her head pounding in rhythm with her heartbeat. She kept pulling weeds because she was too afraid to stop, but her movements became slower and clumsier. She could barely close her injured hand anymore. Every time she tried to grip a weed, fresh waves of pain shot up her arm. By 4 o'clock, Lily was trembling. She'd managed to clear maybe a quarter of the garden, leaving 3/4 still choked with weeds. Her dress was filthy, her face streaked with dirt and tears, and her hand had swollen to nearly twice its normal size. Victoria surveyed the garden with obvious disappointment. "This is pathetic. You've barely made a dent. You'll have to finish tomorrow." "Please," Lily whispered, cradling her injured hand against her chest. "I don't feel good. Can I go inside?" Victoria studied her for a long moment, seeing the swelling but not caring. In her mind, the child was being manipulative, trying to get out of work. "Fine, go to your room, and you can forget about dinner tonight too, since you didn't finish your chores." Lily climbed the stairs to her room, each step feeling like a mountain. She collapsed on her bed, her injured hand throbbing with a deep, aching pain that seemed to reach into her bones. She felt hot and cold at the same time, and the room kept spinning in slow, nauseating circles. She wanted her daddy. She wanted him so badly. It hurt worse than her hand. He would know what to do. He would take her to the doctor and make the pain stop. But he was thousands of miles away, probably in some important meeting, thinking everything at home was perfect. Downstairs, Mrs. Rodriguez stared at her phone, Marcus's number glowing on the screen. The child needed a doctor. Anyone with eyes could see that. The swelling wasn't normal. The color wasn't normal. Nothing about this was normal. But if she called Marcus, Victoria would know, and Victoria had already made it clear what would happen to anyone who interfered with her parenting. She'd fire Mrs. Rodriguez, and then who would be here to watch over Lily? Still, as the evening shadows grew longer and she heard no sound from Lily's room, not even crying, Mrs. Rodriguez made her decision. She pulled up her camera and took a photo of Lily's hand before the child had gone upstairs. Her fingers shook as she typed out a message to Marcus. "Mr. Chen, I'm very worried about Lily. She was bitten by something in the garden today. Her hand is very swollen and she has a fever. Mrs. Victoria says it's nothing, but I think she needs a doctor. Please, come home." She hit send before she could change her mind. Halfway around the world in a Singapore hotel room, Marcus Chen's phone buzzed with a message that would change everything. Marcus Chen had just stepped out of the shower when his phone buzzed on the marble bathroom counter. He was exhausted, the negotiations had stretched late into the night, and tomorrow would be the final push to close the deal. Everything was going according to plan. The Singapore investors were impressed, the terms were favorable, and by this time tomorrow, he'd have secured the biggest acquisition of his career. He grabbed his phone, expecting a message from his assistant about tomorrow's schedule. Instead, he saw Mrs. Rodriguez's name and felt a small flutter of unease. She never contacted him directly unless something was wrong. He opened the message, and his entire world stopped. The photo loaded first, a small hand, Lily's hand, grotesquely swollen, the skin mottled with angry shades of red and purple. 2 distinct puncture marks were visible in the center, surrounded by tissue that looked inflamed and infected. My little girl's hand looked like something from a medical textbook on venomous bites. Marcus's hand started shaking as he read the message. Bitten, garden, fever. Victoria says it's nothing. Nothing, he said aloud to the empty hotel room. Nothing? He immediately tried calling home. The phone rang and rang before going to voicemail. He tried again. Same result. He called Victoria's cell phone. It rang twice before being sent to voicemail, meaning she'd actively rejected the call. Pick up, he growled, calling again. Pick up the damn phone. Nothing. Marcus pulled up the security camera app on his phone, the one he had installed throughout the house after Sarah died, mainly to keep an eye on nannies. Victoria didn't know about all of them. He'd told her about the ones covering the entrances and garage, but not the ones in the main living areas. He'd meant to tell her, but had never gotten around to it. Now, as his fingers flew across the screen, he was grateful for that oversight. He rewound the footage to earlier.
The flight across the Pacific Ocean was the longest 13 hours of Marcus Chen's life. He couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, couldn't think about anything except Lily lying in a hospital bed, fighting for her life because he hadn't been there to protect her. The plane hit turbulence over the Pacific, bouncing through storm clouds that lit up with lightning. Marcus barely noticed. He sat in the leather seat with his laptop open, methodically going through months of security footage, watching his daughter's nightmare unfold in silent video clips. Week 1 after the wedding. Victoria smiling and waving as Marcus left for work, then her face changing the instant his car disappeared. Lily sent to her room without breakfast. Small things at first, easy to explain away. Week 2. Victoria accidentally stepping on Lily's drawing, grinding it into the carpet with her heel while the child watched. Lily sent to bed early, crying silently into her pillow. Week 4. Victoria throwing away the stuffed rabbit Sarah had given Lily, claiming it was ratty and embarrassing. Marcus watched his daughter search the house for hours, not knowing it was in the trash. The footage went on and on. A catalog of cruelty, carefully hidden from the world. Victoria was smart. She never left marks, never did anything that would be obvious to outsiders. But the psychological torture was constant, relentless. Marcus watched himself in the videos too, and that was almost worse. He saw himself coming home exhausted, accepting Victoria's explanations, too tired or too distracted to notice the fear in his daughter's eyes. He saw Lily trying to tell him things, starting sentences she never finished because Victoria would appear and the words would die in her throat. "I'm so sorry, baby," he whispered to the screen, watching 6-year-old Lily eat dinner in silence, while Victoria chatted cheerfully and he checked his phone for work emails. "I'm so sorry." His phone buzzed, a text from the hospital. They'd given him updates every few hours. Lily's condition is stable but serious. Significant necrosis around bite site. Started antibiotics and antivenom treatment. She's asking for you. Marcus typed back immediately. "Tell her Daddy is coming. Tell her I love her and I'm coming as fast as I can." Another message came through, this time from his lawyer, whom he'd called from Singapore. "Marcus, I've reviewed the security footage you sent. This is clear evidence of child abuse and neglect. I've already contacted CPS and the police. Victoria Chen will be arrested when you land. I'm also filing emergency divorce papers and a restraining order. She won't be allowed within 500 feet of Lily." Good. But it wasn't enough. It would never be enough to make up for what he'd allowed to happen.
A third message arrived, this one from an unknown number. Mr. Chen, this is Detective Sarah Morrison with the Child Protection Unit. We've reviewed your security footage and interviewed Mrs. Rodriguez. We have several other concerns we need to discuss with you. Victoria Chen's background check revealed some disturbing information. Can you call me when you land? Marcus's blood ran cold. Background check? He'd done a background check before marrying Victoria, or at least he thought he had. His assistant had hired a company, and they'd come back clean. What had they missed? He called the detective's number despite being mid-flight. Somehow the call connected, one of the benefits of a private jet with satellite phone capabilities. Detective Morrison, this is Marcus Chen. What did you find? Mr. Chen. The detective's voice was serious. Victoria Chen, or Victoria Westbrook as she was known before your marriage, has a history. This isn't the first wealthy widower she's targeted. Marcus felt sick. What do you mean? She was engaged twice before, both times to wealthy single fathers. The first engagement ended when the teenage daughter came forward with allegations of abuse. The case never went to trial. Victoria disappeared before charges could be filed. The second engagement ended under mysterious circumstances. The father's 8-year-old son fell down the stairs and broke his arm. The man became suspicious and hired a private investigator. And the investigator caught her on video pushing the child. She fled before police could question her. Changed her name, moved to a different state. She's been doing this for years, Mr. Chen, finding wealthy men with children, playing the perfect stepmother, then showing her true colors once she secured her position. Marcus's hands clenched into fists. Why didn't this show up in her background check? She's careful, uses different variations of her name, has friends who provide fake references. The background check company you use does basic criminal record searches, but they don't dig into sealed juvenile records or cases where charges weren't filed. We found her because Mrs. Rodriguez gave us details that allowed us to trace her real history. Is she in custody? Not yet. We need to wait until you're back and can press charges, but we have officers watching your house. She won't go anywhere. The plane finally began its descent into LAX. Marcus had never been so impatient in his life. The moment the wheels touched down, he was on his feet, his phone pressed to his ear. Which hospital? He demanded. Children's Hospital, room 412. I have a car waiting for you on the tarmac. Marcus ran. He ran through the private terminal, his bags forgotten on the plane. He threw himself into the waiting car before the driver could even open the door. Children's Hospital, as fast as you can legally drive. The driver must have heard something in his voice, so he nodded and pulled out fast, heading for the highway. His phone rang. Victoria. His hand shook with rage as he answered. Where is she? Marcus, thank God. I've been trying to reach you. It's Lily. Something happened. A spider bite her, and I didn't realize how serious it was. The paramedics came and... Save it, Marcus said, his voice deadly quiet. I know everything. Silence on the other end. I've seen the security footage, Victoria. All of it. Every moment of the past 6 months. Every time you hurt her, starved her, locked her in her room, every single thing you did to my daughter while I was gone. More silence. Then Victoria's voice changed. The sweetness vanished, replaced by something cold and calculating. You can't prove anything. It's just videos. I can explain. The police already have copies. So does Child Protective Services. So does my lawyer. And here's something you didn't know. Those cameras have audio too. She heard her sharp intake of breath. That's right. Every cruel word, every threat, every time you told her she was worthless or that I didn't love her, all recorded, all time-stamped, all admissible in court. Marcus, let's talk about this. I'm sure we can work something out. The only thing you're going to work out is which lawyer you want to hire for your criminal trial. Child abuse, child endangerment, child neglect, and that's just for starters. I'm going to make sure you never get near another child again. You're overreacting. She's fine, isn't she? Kids are resilient. She's in the hospital fighting a brown recluse bite that you ignored for hours. She could have died. She still might have permanent damage because you were too busy playing on your phone to get her medical care. His voice had risen to a shout. The driver glanced nervously in the rearview mirror. "I want a divorce," Marcus continued, forcing his voice back to calm. "I want you out of my house, and I never want to see your face again except in a courtroom." "You'll regret this," Victoria hissed, her mask completely off now. "I'll take you for everything you have. The prenup won't hold up." "The prenup has a clause about abuse. You get nothing. And trust me, I'll spend every penny I have making sure you pay for what you did to my daughter." He hung up and immediately blocked her number. The car pulled up to the hospital entrance. Marcus burst through the doors, running to the elevators. 4th floor, room 412. The numbers on the doors blurred past until he found it. He pushed open the door, and his heart broke all over again. Lily looked so small in the hospital bed, surrounded by monitors and IV lines. Her left hand was wrapped in thick bandages, elevated on a pillow. Her face was pale, her dark hair matted with sweat, but her eyes were open. "Daddy?" she whispered. Marcus was at her bedside in 3 steps, carefully gathering her into his arms, mindful of the IV lines and monitors. "I'm here, baby. Daddy's here. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." Lily burst into tears. Not sad tears, but relieved ones. She wrapped her good arm around his neck and held on like she'd never let go. "I knew you'd come," she sobbed. "I knew you wouldn't leave me." "Never again," Marcus promised, his own tears falling freely now. "Never leaving you again. Never. I promise you, sweetheart. Daddy is staying home now." A doctor appeared in the doorway, giving them a moment before clearing her throat gently. "Mr. Chen, I'm Dr. Patricia Wells. We need to talk about Lily's condition." Marcus nodded, but didn't let go of his daughter. "The brown recluse venom caused significant tissue damage. We're treating her aggressively with antibiotics and supportive care. She'll need surgery tomorrow to remove the necrotic tissue. There will be scarring, possibly permanent nerve damage in her hand." "Whatever she needs," Marcus said. "Whatever it takes." "There's something else," Dr. Wells said, her voice gentler. "When we examined Lily, we found evidence of chronic malnutrition. She's significantly underweight for her age. The social worker has already been notified." Marcus closed his eyes, another wave of guilt crashing over him. He'd noticed Lily looked thin, but had told himself she was just growing, shooting up. More excuses. More ways he'd failed her. "We'll fix it," he said firmly. "All of it. Whatever she needs to heal physically and emotionally, she'll